look. Oh.
I don't think we can talk for two of you. If it's
for goodness sake. For goodness sake. You know what? I think.
Oh, right. No.
Hey, folks. Welcome to the Daily Brexit. Holding democracy to account, fighting for self-determination, exposing hypocrisy. I'm Olly Connelly. Welcome to the show. And coming up, we've got UKIP's Christopher Baksa with us, former Lib Dem councillor, turned UKIP parliamentary candidate in Rochdale.
Good evening, everyone.
And he'll be giving us, here on this debut show, an update on events both in his somewhat dishevelled party and on the post-election outlook for upholding the referendum result. But first, here's my pick of the latest Brexit news. Brexit talks began yesterday with Michel Barnier warning Britain that we face Brexit consequences. The Minister for Brexit, David Davis, is tipped by allies of Boris Johnson to be the next Tory leader, but they're also saying that he's too old. And Boris denies conspiring for the leadership, and Germany may offer the UK a soft Brexit compromise. Meanwhile, hot on the heels of the Finsbury Park attack, ideological idiots continue to vie for supremacy of stupidity. There's been yet another incident in Paris yesterday, second time for the Champs-Élysées this year. Some nutter's dead after ramming a police van with his car, which contained gas canisters, handguns, and a Kalashnikov. And I mention that because I know that story has been largely swept under the carpet. And, of course, migration is a big part of this debate. Good afternoon, Christopher Baksa from UKIP.
Yes, good evening. Good evening.
Lovely to have you on the show, sir. Your audio is a little bit low.
Right. You want me to turn it up?
No. It was me. It wasn't you. It was me.
What's new?
Hey, we've got all sorts of new technical stuff going on here. Now, this is a new show. This is a debut show, folks. So if you've tuned in to say hi and enjoy the thing, that's brilliant. You can get involved. Chris, for goodness sake, you sound as though you're dying or something.
Well, it's warm in here.
It's warm. It's warm. Yeah. Well, I'm the one that had to put on a shirt, mate. Look. So, if you folks, if you do want to get involved, that's terrific. That's great. Please do. Facebook.com, Daily Brexit. You probably know that because you probably have to be there to be checking this thing out. I don't really know. This is the first live video thing I've ever done, apart from earlier today when we did a technical rehearsal. Which went absolutely appallingly. But hey, look! Oh yeah! Whoa! We got 2 people already watching. Incredible! What a fan base!
That's an awful, isn't it?
If people do want to check it out. Oh, hold on! It says the broadcast has been paused. It should resume shortly.
You're on my side.
Yeah? Okay,
yes.
That's good. So maybe it's just on my machine. But you can actually see live pictures, can you, Christopher?
Yes, I can.
And we've got comments underneath. If people... Oh, we've got George Ellis there. Hey, George! God bless you, mate.
Hello, George. Hello, George.
How you doing? If anybody does want to comment, if anybody's got any questions for Christopher or for me, then please, bring them in. Bring them in the comments. If you've got any points that you want to make, if we say something and you don't agree with it, or you can elaborate on it, if you've got some reference that is useful for the debate, I want to hear it. And I'll be very, very grateful for your input. That's the kind of show this is. A bit of an idea, just before we crack on with Christopher here, so that you've got an idea of the editorial line. The Daily Brexit is an independent vehicle. It's not affiliated to any political party. It is affiliated to democracy and to self-determination and to upholding that referendum result. That's what the Daily Brexit is all about. It intends to do it. I intend to do it with a good dose of good old British sense of humour, because let's face it, these days you chuck on the news and it's laugh or cry. We're going to laugh irrespective, and we're going to get democracy. Christopher, isn't that right, sir?
That's correct, yes, we do.
What is going on now with UKIP?
Well, I suppose, as you know, there is a leadership and an election.
Yes.
Are you talking to yourself there?
There's a delay. There's a latency thing. You have to ignore that a little bit.
I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear anything.
No, that's all right. Don't worry. Just kind of bear in mind there's a delay. So, folks, when you're watching this, it isn't actually live. It's as live. So I could easily edit things and spin things that Chris says before. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. Christopher, who's going to start? Is UKIP? Is it going to survive? It's not a done deal.
Well, that is a good question. I think what's going to happen is it will depend on whether or not we can find a charismatic leader as good as Nigel Farage.
That's a bit of a tricky one. I mean, I don't think any of the mainstream parties can find a leader as charismatic as Nigel Farage, irrespective of what you think of his views. No?
No, you're right. It did say, however, that you would let us know by the Friday that's just gone. However, the election will only start this Friday coming. So he may put his hat in, he may not.
And you think that UKIP is the way to go? You don't think it's a busted flush and maybe we need to look at a new trick?
Lots of people are wanting this. I think a lot of people want to start a new party with Nigel Farage and Aaron Banks involved. But I can't see that going anywhere unless, like we say, we need a decent leader. There are plenty of little offshoot parties that are anti this, anti that, and they never go very far. And I just cannot see another party doing any better.
No, sure. But it has to be said that UKIP does come with some baggage. And in a way, I know there's two different ways of looking at this.
Baggage?
You're a lovely old bag, mate. I know there's a couple of different ways of looking at this, because on the one hand, UKIP, as a pressure group, created the opportunity for that referendum, did something that the Labour Party lied about. They U-turned on having a referendum under Tony Blair, as we know. Same deal with Cameron, same deal with the Lib Dems. UKIP was the force that actually, and Nigel Farage in particular, that created that opportunity. So that on one, I mean, from the point of view of democracy, hey, what's wrong with that? On the other hand, UKIP does have baggage, and it is regarded as being, well, you know, frankly xenophobic and all of these kind of things. In a way, is it not better to try and find...
No. UKIP have never been racist, nor have they been xenophobic.
I didn't say that. Christopher, I didn't say that. I said it has been regarded as such. And the media is absolutely, has been selling that line ever since really James Goldsmith set it up.
You've got to remember, they did the same with the EDL party, they did the same with the BNP.
I can't hear you now. You've gone.
You've gone off.
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you. Carry on. They did it with the EDL, with the BNP. They're doing it with the DUP at the moment.
About you calling me a xenophobe. Now,
I didn't say that. I did not say that. I said...
You said that the media categorized us as racist and xenophobic.
Yes, that's different. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
However, they also did exactly the same, and they still do with the EDL, They still do it with the BNP party.
They're doing it with the DUP.
However, you've got to remember that the British people are normally one of the most tolerant, generous people in the world. But however, being ridden roughshod all by a minority and their government is only ever going to lead to trouble. It's sad, but kind of inevitable.
I agree with that. I agree with that. We are seeing a kind of a cause and effect situation, aren't we, where the British people, the indigenous British people, have been suppressed for so long, for so many decades, for generations now, by government that doesn't seem to be working in their interest, that there is a pushback. And it's unfortunate, no, because there is this kind of cause and effect. But is it not ideal? Would it not be most sensible if we could find a party, and bearing in mind that UKIP is not a right-wing nor a left-wing party, it draws support from both sides of the aisle. Would it not be better if we could have a fresh start with a party that was more consensual, was trying to back away from, if you like, the migration issue slightly, except where it absolutely applies to getting Brexit done, and that should be the priority. Pardon? Well, yeah, but they're Remainers. The Conservatives are they leavers? I don't think they're leavers.
Yes, I think the majority are leavers now.
Do you really?
Yes, there are still a few. Even Philip Hammond, he was a Remainer. And according to the Independent, Philip Hammond has said that leaving the EU without any deal or trade would be a very, very bad outcome. But maintaining that there are other outcomes that would be worse.
I want to play you.
On Sunday on the Andrew Marr show, he said it would be better to leave with no deal than to accept a deal deliberately structured to suck the lifeblood out of the UK economy over a long period of time. Now that's a complete turnaround.
Let me play you something that Philip Hammond said earlier today at his Mansion House speech.
When the British people voted last June, they did not vote to become poorer or less secure. They did vote to leave the EU, and we will leave the EU.
Sorry, that last bit, I added that last bit. Okay, right. Philip Hammond is a Remainer. He is saying in that quote, he is saying in that quote that the British public voted for this, they didn't vote for that. He does not know. All that we do know is that the British public voted to leave the European Union. That's it. There was nothing on that paper, on that chit at the top of the Daily Brexit page, where I've got the X there, and that I took a photograph of mine because I was so chuffed for the first time to be voting for something that I really believed in.
Yes.
That
I think most people did.
Yeah. It's sad, isn't it, taking photos of what you vote. Anyway, but we did not vote necessarily on a financial basis. A lot of us voted, I did, on an ideological basis. I voted for self-determination. I voted because I want to have a say at the ballot box, and I do not get that with an anti-democratic institution such as the EU. I don't get it much in the British Parliament, but at least it's better.
There's a difference between you and I and Mr. Hammond.
Well, he's the Chancellor.
In Essex, went to a local school and then to Oxford.
Yes.
Started the same day the Labour Party came into power in 1974. In 1997, he ran for MP for Runside and Weybridge. In 1997 to 2001, he was the Shadow Minister for Health. September 2001 to 2002.
Oh, hold on, Chris. Can I just interrupt? I do apologise. I understand from Piers, who's listening in, that you were echoing, and that was my fault. That was a technical issue, and that should now no longer be the case. And I do apologise to folks. Yeah, you were saying Chris Hammond. Yeah,
Piers, and I'm upset that he's not on.
Philip Hammond. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, he's not on today. He's not on today. Yes. Yes, Philip Hammond is not like us, you're saying?
No, he's not. He's not a working man, is he, really? Come on. You know,
that's not the point, though, is it? Because it's not whether you're a working man or what class you are. It's what you feel, really, in your heart about your culture and the multicultural in the UK. I mean, it's whether or not you have confidence.
The media are sprouting that, this, that, and the other, and the people, the working people of this country are being left behind. What the BBC are doing is actually appalling and contributing to more divisiveness here in this country.
I agree.
If they took the time to promote news and not people's opinion, it would be trying to force a false rhetoric on us, the Christian people. The BBC so-called ideology is a farce. The English people born in this country, the 17.4 million that voted for the referendum, will not be pandered or be bullied by the soapy, abhorrent articles which try to invalidate our beliefs of the country policies to protect and keep us all safe. They can mention us anytime they wish, but they don't. They're too busy giving credence to panic and disorder.
We've got a quote here from George Hellis, a comment. The problems UKIP have with these accusations are pretty much media generated on the backs of the other political parties. This was started because if they could be demonized, they wouldn't succeed. It was the fear of UKIP by the other parties because they knew how popular it would become.
Certainly was.
So, yes. Nonetheless,
that is a fact, by George.
I agree with that. I do. However, the perception is still there. I personally, I don't care what political party or parties get us over the line of Brexit. I don't care. But what I do care about is seeing us get there.
Well, you should care. You should care. Because we've got to look at it this way, Ollie, and that is that the Labour Party were Remainers. The majority of the shadow MPs and the shadow government are Remainers. And they want to stay in the single market whatever it takes. And now staying in the single market means that we have to have freedom of movement. And most of all, the majority of the 17.4 million wanted a stop to this. The country is now becoming, it's imploding, and we've got to put a stop to it.
Is this going to happen with the Tories? Because I don't trust Theresa May as far as I'd care to throw her.
Well, when have you ever trusted a Tory?
Well, I used to be naive, and I trusted all sorts and voted for them, and it just all went tits up. I mean, every time. Which is one of the reasons why I no longer trust them. And on such an important issue, to deliver Brexit, not soft Brexit, not hard Brexit, just Brexit, i.e. get us out, stop, paying for their wine cellar. Let's have accountability of where the money goes, for crying out loud. They should be doing that for all European nations. Anyway, got to have control back of our courts. And, of course, the borders, because it's the first duty of government to protect its citizenry. And so all these things, that is Brexit.
Come in as a party, because they care about the welfare, the safety, and the prosperity of this once wonderful country. It's the only party that has more interest in the country, as opposed to outside the country, than any other party.
UKIP, you're saying?
UKIP, yes.
Okay, all right, fair enough. All right, we've covered that. I'm going to take you at face value, what you've said.
Uh-oh.
In which case, and you got a lovely face, Chris. You got a good face. What I want to know in that case is who's going to be leading it. And I know Farage is really playing his cards close to his chest, isn't he?
Yes, he certainly is.
That must be very frustrating for a lot of your grassroots.
It certainly is, and there are many people that's wanting to stand as a leader that really wouldn't take the party anywhere.
What are the names that are being bandied around?
Oh, there are quite a few actually. John Rhys-Evans, Bill Etheridge. Actually, Bill and Rhys are not too bad. Then there are a few grassroots members who want to lead the party, but they have to remember that they're having to fork out at least £5,000 for the deposit, and then they've got to do the leafleting, and then they've got to do the campaigning, and that money will just be wasted because London Environment have more members than the rest of the country put together, which means it'll be a London leader. It will mean that the UKIP party will see that the votes from London outstretch the rest of the country by miles, and who gets the most votes will win.
This actually is another big problem. Just to go down this aside for a second of London as opposed to the rest of the UK. Scotland, no surprise to me, wants to stay within the UK. We saw that from the general election, and they also are not that keen on the EU. We saw that, in my opinion, from the general election. Nicola Sturgeon got a big, no.
She did.
I think that Scotland made a pretty solid case there. I think Northern Ireland did similarly, because the DUP was the biggest party, and the DUP wants a Brexit, a proper Brexit. And Wales, on the other hand, is a little bit more mixed. Labour did very well in Wales. Excuse me. Wales also the same, you could argue, because Labour, whether you believe them or not, they are talking about leaving even the single market, a true Brexit. So
that was in their manifesto. However, a lot of the appointed shadow cabinet were saying differently. Also, on the different media channels, they were not quite sure if they were coming or going, to be perfectly honest with you. If Corbyn really cared about the working class people, he would be flagging up the many problems caused by the fact our population is rising by over 300,000 every year because of immigration alone. He would be highlighting, as UKIP does, how this drive downs wages, makes low-skilled jobs harder to find, forces capable workers to fall back on benefits, creates housing shortages which push up prices, lengthens GP and hospital waiting lists which everybody has to wait, and prevents children getting places at the school nearest to their home. I remember when I was a Liberal Democrat councillor, I had many mothers phoning me up and saying, I'd like to get my child into that school. Can you have a word with the headmaster? On my phoning the headmaster, he would tell me 96 children applied for a 30 places classroom size. Where are these people coming from? They were then having to be sent from a Christian or a Church of England school to a Catholic school, which the child did not want to go, and mother and daddy definitely didn't want them to go. On my phoning the headmaster, he would tell me, where do we come from?
I'm sorry, Chris, that last bit? Christopher? I apologise. I just opened this into full screen and the volume turned up.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Ross.
That's all right. That's okay. There's a few little technical issues with this first show because basically, hey, I'm learning the ropes. Right. Okay. Right. I understand that. With regards this divide between London and the rest of the country, to the point that its mayor was talking off the back of the referendum about having a separate city-state.
Oh, come on!
How concerned should we be at the division between London and the rest of the country, which I don't see between, if you like, the heart of England and anywhere else in the UK?
Well, you haven't been to London for so long, obviously, because it's dreadful. I went to a march in January, and
You didn't go to the Al-Quds march?
I was totally blown aback.
Right.
By it looking like a South African third world country, with the vegetables sold on the streets, hardly any white folk. They were running around as though they were lost in space or something. But it's not racist to want to leave the anti-democratic, official and financially incompetent European Union. It's not racist to want Britain to be a country and govern itself. It's not racist to want to control our borders, as some 200 other countries do.
I agree with that.
It's not racist to want everyone on minimum wage out of tax, invest more money into the NHS, scrap levies on fuel bills, free schools and excess regulations. This is a Labour policy that's not going to work, especially when they're letting in, or wanting to, Ollie, 300,000 per annum, net. Which means that is after our white skilled folk have left the country.
Yeah, yeah. There is an old English, proverb, if you like, saying, which, charity begins at home. Because if you don't look after yourself and your own family, then you ain't no good to anybody else. And it does seem, I think it's fair to say, that we do have to try to protect and look after and educate our own people, and try and make them be incentivized to become nurses and doctors and scientists, rather than importing from other places, because we do have such poverty in our inner cities and so many young people whose lives are just on the heap. We've obviously got that problem. I understand that. But nonetheless, Chris, we do have a situation where there is this division between London and the UK. Is that something that can be bridged, or is that just something that has always been the case? London, like New York, is different.
No, I think we have 2 points here. One is that immigrants or illegals coming into the UK can actually fundamentally easily get lost in London. It is so big.
Yes.
And this is probably why, when we had this tragic fire last week,
Grenfell,
where they say only 50 went missing, but a lot of people are saying there were 130 missing, it's because the other 70 people were actually not registered.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
As living there, or actually being even in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, I do wonder how many illegal immigrants there were in there. Yeah. I do wonder.
Well, this is an interesting idea of people coming and going whenever they please, as migrants and illegals. I don't see how you would be able to build a political coalition around both liberalising migration and repealing anti-discrimination laws. I'm sceptical that xenophobes would tolerate having more immigrants around if they were allowed to discriminate against them. I mean, I'm persuadable that their opposition to open borders might diminish somewhat, but I don't think I'd go away. I think you need to stay in this country and support it.
Yes. Okay. All right. So how do you see UKIP's role in holding the government's feet to the fire? I mean, is that basically the role now, or is UKIP on hold until the next election, in which case they might have to prepare pretty quickly?
Pretty quickly. If we have to do it pretty quickly, we'll be in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sure. But you say that, but I do wonder how many people, myself included, by the way, I have never voted for UKIP yet, but
yeah,
such is the distrust I have for the Conservative Party. I do feel that I probably would vote for UKIP at the next election, just to give a protest vote, to ensure that the pressure group, which I would like to see have a few seats, to basically to try and hold this democracy to account, because people like Philip Hammond, I believe, and actually people like Boris Johnson, I believe, are not committed to the will of the British people. And maybe we do need to give them a bit of a shock. But I was thinking, coming up to this election, the reason I voted Conservative at this last election was because they said, we'll deliver Brexit. And I thought, you know what? Okay, it looks as though they are the party to do it. I certainly don't trust the Labour Party with that role because it's full of Blairites, globalists, as you have said yourself. Having said that, though, the fact that the Conservative Party is so weak electorally, the fact that the Chancellor of the Exchequer breathes Remain soft, he calls it sort of soft Brexit. As far as I'm concerned, that's Remain.
Yeah.
That's Remain.
Yeah, of course
so
it is. Of course
I would personally, I'm pretty damn sure, vote UKIP if there was a snap election again, or if it's down the road and things haven't changed, that the Conservative Party has absolutely gone for it. I think I would vote UKIP, and I imagine a lot of people agree. Do you not think that UKIP's role at this last election was essentially put on hold?
It was actually said by our leader that should there not be a candidate within your area to vote Conservatives to keep the Labour Party out.
Yeah.
However, let's get one thing straight, Ollie. Their manifesto, Labour's manifesto, I say, was a little bit far-fetched. A lot of people believed what they were saying, and a lot of people were accepting what they were saying. However, UKIP's role at this stage in the process is to keep our feet on the ground and to try and get the message across via media, via social media, to get the message across. It's simple. There is no other way. We have no MPs. We can't go in there and force them to do what we want.
No.
However, we can get people to start saying, hold on a moment, this is not going in the right direction. We need to have some say in this. And I think what will happen is that Theresa May will have to step down and call another election. Then it would be our chance to this time to say, listen, it's time we voted for what we want. And I think 17.4 million will vote UKIP.
Well, that sounds like a lot, but 3.7 million did vote for UKIP at a time when UKIP was not expected to do so well. And so I would say that is an indication that there potentially could be a much, much larger vote share for UKIP. And it has to be said that even in this last election where UKIP did badly in terms of seats, it still got more votes than I think it still got more votes than the Lib Dems throughout the country, didn't it?
Yeah, of course it did. Yes, it did.
And the Green Party.
Yes,
I think those two combined.
Together.
Yeah. And I think it got half as many votes as the SNP did in Scotland. And
even though Nigel Farage has upset the establishment on numerous occasions, he is still being demonised. Those who campaign for civil liberties and free speech will be trying to stop our rights of free speech by using the race card again on some new referendum. That is what this is all about. Being branded either racist because we believe we need a point system, being called racist because we don't want people in our country who are keeping jobs away from the working class people.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure if the BBC don't want an EU referendum, and that is what it's all about.
The BBC
an
is
idiot walking around with his eyes shut would believe immigration is not out of control, numbers to lie, not only in visiting hospitals, schools or roads. You drive along these roads today, they are overcrowded. It takes me less than 25 kilometres, more than 2 hours when the traffic is at the highest.
That was actually
to drive 25 miles.
Yeah. You see, that was my point about Philip Hammond's quote earlier, where he said, I don't think that people voted to be worse off. I think actually that's a bit of a stretch, that claim. As a general, I would agree. On the other hand, I would say that people also vote for quality of life. and that doesn't necessarily equate to having a larger pay packet. And
No.
for example, the last time I was in London, driving down the A40 coming out of London was an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. It's complete. It's just choked. Totally choked. I do understand what you're saying. I want to bring up.
Understand what I'm saying.
I want to bring up a point from George Hellis, because he's been kind enough to make it. We used to train more doctors and nurses than we needed by the NHS. Now we steal them from mainly third world countries that paid to train them, but not to our standards. So we're taking away from those third world countries, and their people, their patients are suffering because we want them, and because why on earth are we not training our own people? Yeah, sure, bring in people from other places too, but on the other hand, maybe we should think about the immorality, you could argue, of taking away from third world countries, for example, their professional services. What do you think about that? I suppose it's obvious. I know what you're going to say about that.
George is right. I think if you look at what Nigel Farage said about 3 years ago when he said, we better be careful by opening this free migration because of the Bulgarians now joining and the Romanians now joining. Now, we have to remember that these people, okay, they do a nice fair job in Romania and Bulgaria, but they're on £1.50 an hour. Now, as we were saying earlier, Ollie, do you not think they would come here when they're getting £7.50 an hour?
Yeah.
Of course, they're going to run at it. Anybody would take their family and start up a new life on rather £7.50 as opposed to £1.50.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Now, the other matter you mentioned was the nurses and the doctors.
Yes.
We're bringing them in because it's cheaper than to pay for our own education system to train our own nurses and doctors. Mr. Corbyn said recently in the manifesto, the Labour manifesto, that he would give free university courses to people that wanted to go to university. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Does that mean that every Bulgarian and every Romanian would not rush here, wanting free education, with then employing or going to employ after they finish their courses, of course, doctors, nurses, Beatles, memorabilia, whatever the courses they're on, rather than teaching our own people?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, this the junk that we're teaching kids instead of investing.
I read an article. The other week. The Chinese people who come to our universities have already failed into getting into their own.
Yeah.
Now, they are keeping back somebody who would like to go to university off the estate here, who is quite capable of doing the same training.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a disgrace. And our inner cities are cursed with young people who their life is just being ruined before they've even begun.
Yes.
And they have no opportunity. Yes. And it actually looks third world.
When you drive down London, you will see it looks third world. And I'm not talking 1 mile away from the Parliament buildings either.
No, I know. I'm
talking around the Hilton Hotel, which is about 1.5 miles away from Parliament. I could not believe it. The roads are chock-a-block, the streets are full of tomatoes and oranges, and it looks like a South African town selling market gear. It's disgusting.
So we've basically lost our dignity. And
we're coming down to their level, yes.
Instead of trying to bring up and help other countries, because there is another side to this whole debate, which is, as opposed to what we're doing to our culture, it's what we're doing to other cultures. And so, for example, we're in Syria. I mean, gee, look at Aleppo. It's like 10,000 Grenfell towers. That's what Aleppo looks like. Or, Basra, wherever. We've ruined Iraq. I mean, we've got some problems with the way we set the thing up. many, many moons ago, the way we took the three tribes and tried to slam them together because basically it made it convenient for us to grab the oil. We do have problems with that. We have problems, with all sorts of things with the Middle East due to that. But more recently, we've just been blitzing the hell out of these places, and then wondering, guess what? They're going to want to go somewhere. They're going to want to go somewhere. And not just that, that's the war profiteering that's been going on with our friends, the Saudis, and so on and so forth, but also the lack of fair trade on an even keel, so that with the EU is a protectionist racket, isn't it? I mean, it does seem to me that we need to be discussing both sides of this debate. On the one hand, we need to be talking about what we've been discussing in the last 40 minutes, but also we need to be thinking about our responsibility to the rest of the world to give humankind an equal opportunity and to try and bring people up and lift them out of poverty. And we're not doing that. And so where does UKIP stand in terms of this foreign policy question as opposed to the home affairs question?
Well, I suppose, it's our own government who do not know these things. The ex-communist countries like Romania, Bulgaria, etc., whose economic growth is mainly based on cheap labour, prices are high, as the country export balance is usually unfavourable, as they live mainly on credit because of buying more than it produces. Wages are not rising fast, only a bit slower than the inflation, and if they did grow this world, obliterated one of the few advantages ex-communist countries have is cheap labour, many times attained through not respecting the employees' rights.
Yes.
For instance, the percentage of educated people in Romania is one of the lowest in Europe. The majority of people that already migrated out of the ex-communist countries is not composed of mainly educated, competitive people, but of unspecialised, unskilled, low-class and low-income individuals. Is this the migrants' wave that we the British, are talking about? As these people would be willing to take any low-paying job for a lot less than the workers in Western countries. They don't have much to lose in their own country. Usually they've been out of work for donkey's years. They are also prone to getting into legal trouble. Of course, it is said wrongly, I might add, the migrants' wave will not be as big and bad as some of us predicted or exaggerated upon, but it has still risen. The crime rates, this comes together with low income and education, has nothing to do with being Romanian and Bulgarian. It's not going to change. If we are offering, or the Labour Party are offering this, that and the other, and every benefit going under the sun, should you not have a job, or you be a bit low on your luck, it's not going to change. The quantity of migrants is still going to come into the country, whatever anyone says. And the only time it will stop is when either the Conservatives, because Labour are definitely not going to do it, or UKIP stand up, get our border post back up in running in normal order and saying, like they do in Australia, like they definitely do in America, what have you come for, how much money have you got, and where are you going to live? And those are more or less the three countries that you get asked. Even if you go to South Africa, a third world country, you have 3 months on a British passport to travel to most countries, but South Africa, they kick you out after 3 months. No, I'd like to stay a bit longer. That should not happen. What happens here, like we said earlier, when they get to London, they're just disappearing. Nobody can find them. Change their name, live with a family member, whatever, disappeared. And eventually, after so many years, the government come along and say, oh, well, you've been here 5 years, I'll give you a British passport. Ow! It's just totally unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It's actually demographic engineering is what it is.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay. Is there a chance you might run for the leadership?
No. I've been asked, but no, thank you. I don't have the media personalities like you know on here. I get a little bit tongue-tied. I try and get things out as fast as possible, and I shouldn't. I should speak more slowly. I know. And I think there are I'm sure many more people that can do the job much better than I could possibly ever do it.
Do you think we're going to find somebody who genuinely is more impressive and more acceptable to the British public than was Paul Nuttall?
Now, yes, that is a definite. But we're looking. You just said something very important there, the British public. And I think UKIP now have to appoint somebody that attracts the British public, not us foot people that support UKIP already. We support UKIP because of their policies and their manifesto policies. They are brilliant. It's unfortunate that all these people in this country do not take the time to read a manifesto. And that is the sad thing that UKIP have a fault with. Not getting the media time like the other parties do in expressing their policies out to the public.
That is not going to happen, though, is it, realistically?
No.
Don't get me wrong.
No.
I've worked as a journalist for some years. I've worked at the BBC, at places like Bloomberg. I know the scene. I know the BBC is actually utterly biased, and in fact receives grants from Brussels. To be honest with you, I despise BBC News. I despise BBC News. And I tend to despise what I call the fake stream media, by and large. However, is it not the case that their attitude toward their bias towards or against UKIP is not going to change, and that UKIP just has to allow for that in its strategizing? And therefore, is it not the case that UKIP ultimately really, whilst it would be terrific if it managed to get a couple of seats or a few seats, on the other hand, more realistically, it is a pressure group to be reckoned with?
Yes, I think we have a lot of foot soldiers, I think, that are serious about UKIP and who are members, with one aim, and that is to become or to have members within the Parliament. That is the only way we can actually get our voice across. And it's just unfortunate that Nigel was smeared at every time he stood anywhere, even though nobody read the policies and he was actually telling the truth. It was fully costed. There are some fantastic policies in there, and one of the policies is getting rid of the TV license. And then you want to know, do BBC have something against UKIP for bringing this policy forward?
I think they've got something against UKIP for all sorts of reasons. Because they just are the antithesis of what UKIP stands for. The fact that they have British in their title, I find absolutely incredible these days. I really do. I do wonder, actually, if it really stands for the Boys Buggering Club or the Brussels Broadcasting Corporation. I'm not quite sure. I'm still trying to work that one out. But
yeah, but they're just not listening to the voice of the English people and continue to be a source of contention against security, freedom, and our God-given right to protect ourselves from all enemies, foreign and domestic. They continue their course of falsehoods and misinformation, which only strengthens the wrath and the resolve of the British citizen. Me, myself, I'm doing absolutely everything to make the United Kingdom great again. Shouldn't they be doing the same?
Yes, they should. So the bottom line, though, with the media is that it is, as is the case with many professions, not least of all politics, in Westminster, where we have so many career politicians as opposed to conviction politicians. The problem largely with places like the Beeb and the media is that it's full of Jobsworths who are not interested in true journalism. They're interested in keeping a job. And I can understand that too. But that is a problem, no?
I tell you, the other thing that's appalling to me, in particular, is that it's worse than actually African TV. We see so many Africans, Indians, Pakistanis. I actually see less when I watch the South African TV. When I go back to South Africa for a holiday and watch their TV, you don't see all this nonsense. They speak proper English. It is to the English people. But now BBC was always brought up to speak the Queen's English, and now we're getting Africans on there. They can't speak the English, never mind whether English, Chinese or Dutch. It is not the Queen's English. It's getting less and less quality. The quality is just going downhill.
Yeah. You say the Queen's English. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Your English.
Well, yeah,
my Yorkshire accent.
I have to say, your accent is more genuinely English than is mine. My English is received English as opposed to a genuine old accent. It has to be said. But
Mine's
okay,
Yorkshire.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really a question, I suppose, of just hitting your head against the brick wall long enough, hoping that you can weaken it enough that the damn thing falls down in terms of getting through to the British public. But people are very, very stubborn. People have been brought up in the EU. The vast majority of, well, I mean, all the youth vote, for example, that voted for Corbyn at the last election, they've been around pretty much only since Maastricht. Only since Maastricht. They've only ever known the EU.
Yeah, but Ollie, that wasn't anything to do with the EU. It was based on the same policy that the Liberal Democrats brought out in 2010, and that was to give free university. This is how the Lib Dems got into Parliament then, and this is how the Labour Party thought they would get into power.
Yeah, well, I think...
And it wasn't anything to do with the EU. It was a policy for the young to get free education at university.
I don't know why we just don't reintroduce national service and they can pay for their education that way. And they don't necessarily have to be in the forces. They could be, helping elderly people or something, or doing some sort of civic duty. I personally think that would have been a good thing for me, that I would have become a more rounded person had I...
I think also we should have...
But you're saying that the youth vote for Corbyn was not about the EU so much as it was about the handout, the free education point. Yes. You believe that?
Yes, I certainly do.
Yeah.
There is no way anybody could believe anything that Corbyn was saying unless they had actually read the manifesto and seen the policies that Labour were giving everything out with no interest of where the money was coming from.
Yeah. It is hard to argue with that, because after all, Corbyn is a leaver. It seems to me that he is more keen on leaving than ever was May. Sorry?
I said, you've also got to realise, would you like that gentleman stood up as your Prime Minister looking like a scruff that he does? Really? Let's be honest.
Well, yeah.
But the younger don't seem to worry about having respect for themselves. They're more interested in having tattoos and pierced ears and looking like an idiot, rather than looking presentable with some dignity. I know a lot of people are going to complain about that, but it is a fact.
Okay, you're giving away your age, sir.
You
may or may not be right. There's a lot of very clever people with tattoos, I dare say.
I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying there isn't.
Yeah.
But are we going to have them standing up in Parliament as our Prime Minister?
Yes. Okay. Talking of, we have got 4 minutes left, Chris. We've got 4 minutes. Do you think that May will survive as Prime Minister until Article 50 is... the whole process has gone through? So we're talking about, what is it? May 2019, is it?
2 years, yes.
Yeah.
No. Next question.
So in that case, who do you think that this government will fall? And if it does, what are the prospects of us actually seeing Brexit?
The way I look at it is this way. We have probably 3 intelligent, educated people that could run this country. We've got Rees-Mogg.
Rees-Mogg.
Absolutely brilliant. He's brilliant. I don't care what anybody says, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he is.
We
I
have
agree.
David Davis. We have David Davis who could do and stand up and do the job. And then we have maybe a couple of others, but that is unimportant. However, I do not think we would be looking at a Tory government should we have another election.
We'll be looking at a Labour government.
We certainly would. With their free policies, our country is doomed. And I'm serious now. Our country is doomed. When they're coming into places like the media and saying, oh, let's have a separate state for this minority or a separate state for this minority. I've been through this in the apartheid years. 1994, if you remember.
Yes.
We had the AWB saying, okay, there's a nice piece of land over there. All whites must move there. What a stupid blooming comment that was.
You
really.
did live in South Africa for some years, didn't you?
I lived in South Africa for 26 years.
Right. And you came back
life.
to the UK 17 years ago, no?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Okay. Right. So let's say that happens, that this government falls and that we have a Labour government. What is to stop the Blairite-controlled NEC, the National Executive Council, grasping the power, taking the reins from Corbyn and calling the shots and preventing Brexit?
Well, that's a fact.
Do you think that would happen?
That would be a fact, because you know as well as I do that Mr. Corbyn and his followers do not want to come out of the single market, which means more or less
it's in his manifesto.
I don't care what it says in his manifesto. What the Labour Party will do is keep us in. Whether it's we get out of so-and-so, but we're staying in because of the single market, which means that we then have to have free movement of people.
Who is more powerful, Jeremy Corbyn or the NEC?
Oh, the NEC. The NEC. Definitely. The same with UKIP. The same with any party.
Because the grassroots, the Labour grassroots.
The grassroots of the UKIP do not appreciate the NEC telling our leader what to say, what to do, whatever. It is wrong. The NEC should not be in charge of the leadership contest. The leadership contest should be for anybody, and therefore the one with the most votes wins. Not because the NEC, hold on a minute, there's more supporters in London than there is in North West or Manchester or Newcastle. It should be a matter of votes.
Chris, we're out of time.
I've got one last thing to say.
I was going to ask.
The only solution is to vote UKIP, because only when we vote UKIP will we move beyond condemnation of hollow words of support and move towards accountability that demonstrates commitment to rule of law. Only then can we shape a different future for our children and the younger generation. Good night, everybody.
Christopher Baksa, UKIP, parliamentary candidate for Rochdale as was, and now looking to get the party back on its feet and basically pushing for Brexit. I really appreciate very much you coming on the show, on this debut show, sir. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you.
I do hope you'll come back.
Someday.
Did you enjoy it?
I certainly did. The first one ever. Very good.
That's brilliant. Thank you. We've got a few technical problems. I apologize. You didn't know, but at the top of the show, there was quite a lot of echo on your audio, and that was my fault because I pressed the wrong button on the mixer thing. So
well, it would be. It can't be my fault. I don't have a mixer.
No, that's right. No, well, God bless you, man. God bless you. I'll tell you, Christopher Baksa, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ollie.
And thanks, folks, for tuning in.
Where's the jingle?
Really appreciate
Come on, let's have a
it. Terrific. I might change this theme music. This is the theme music I used on my old show. big thank you to everybody who please support the show. I want to make this show a daily show. We've got guests lined up for the next couple of months, and that's terrific. I'm so chuffed that there is a take-up. With people wanting to discuss this from all sides of the aisle with the aim of Brexit and democracy. I appreciate it. God bless you.
Bye, Ollie. Bye, Ollie. Thanks very much.
Now, how do I stop this bloody thing?
You press... you press stop.
See you Thursday, people.